Welcome to The Explainer. I'm so glad you're here with us today. We're going to be taking a really eye-opening look at something that actually affects millions of us, but often flies completely under the radar. We're diving into how past pain, stuff we probably think we've totally moved past, is actually subtly dictating our daily lives, our decisions, and, yeah, our ultimate happiness. It's a heavy question right up front, isn't it? Do you pretend that everything's good when it really isn't? See, when we don't have a positive, healthy way to deal with our past pain, we don't just magically get over it. Instead, we end up just repressing those negative emotions. We sweep them right under the rug. But as we're going to see throughout this explainer, that repressed energy, it doesn't just disappear. It changes shape and kind of hides in our daily behaviors. So before we get into those hidden behaviors, let's establish a shared baseline. What exactly is trauma? Well, trauma is often the result of an overwhelming amount of stress from a situation that simply exceeds your ability to cope. Now, we usually think of trauma as only surviving extreme, catastrophic events, right? But actually, it can also be the death of a loved one, the messy end of a deeply meaningful relationship, or even a profound rejection. It's really just about your emotional threshold being shattered. Okay, let's dive right into this. Because honestly, it can be surprisingly hard to recognize unresolved trauma on the surface, especially within ourselves. Based on our source material, we've organized the research into 9 distinct, hidden signs that indicate you might still be suffering from unhealed trauma. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be navigating through 4 key sections: sabotaging change and success, control, isolation, and anger, the mind and body toll, and finally, the path to healing. All right, part 1, sabotaging change and success. Unhealed trauma has this incredibly sneaky way of completely warping our relationship with personal growth. Instead of embracing progress, our wounded minds often treat it like a threat. So let's look at sign number 1, resisting positive change. Let me ask you, when something genuinely good comes into your life, is your very first instinct to be suspicious of it? Do you feel this innate sense of shame or guilt when you celebrate your own success or when you finally grow attached to someone? If so, you might be carrying unresolved trauma. Trauma makes it so hard to accept positive change because deep down inside, a part of you literally feels like you simply don't deserve to be happy. And this brilliantly illustrates the ultimate double bind of trauma. On one hand, we've got sign 3, a strong fear of failure. Now, sure, being afraid of failing is totally normal human nature, but a trauma-induced fear of failure completely outweighs your motivation to succeed. It stifles your creativity, makes you miss out on opportunities, and breeds this crippling perfectionism, all because unresolved trauma makes you internalize your shortcomings. But then, on the flip side of that exact same coin is sign 4, a strong fear of success. Have you ever sabotaged a chance at something great just because you were terrified of what would happen if you actually got it? You get afraid of losing what you'll have before you even achieve it. This kind of unconscious self-sabotage is really frequently seen in people who are abandoned or lost a loved one at a young age. So yeah, trauma paralyzes us from both ends of the spectrum. Let's move on to part 2, control, isolation, and anger. Now let's shift our focus outward and see how unresolved trauma dictates our daily interactions with the world. Enter sign 2, needing to plan for absolutely everything. Do you feel intensely frustrated and lost whenever things don't go exactly as expected? This desperate need for control, this constant micromanaging of your environment, it's usually rooted in a past traumatic experience that left you feeling utterly helpless and vulnerable. By trying to control every little detail now, you're basically overcompensating. It reveals a deep-seated distrust in both yourself and in the unpredictability of the world around you. Next up is sign 6, trouble asking for help. Look, if you've experienced abuse or mistreatment, opening up can feel incredibly dangerous. You might find yourself suffering in absolute silence, completely unwilling to reach out. And why? Because you're deeply afraid of being rejected, denied, judged, or seen as weak by the people around you. The trauma has basically convinced your brain that vulnerability is a liability, and it's just heartbreaking how isolating that can be. And tragically, that internal pressure cooker leads us to sign 7, hurting yourself or others. Unhealed pain can cause us to become emotionally volatile, out of control, and overly sensitive. When you experience really intense emotions, you might lash out at people, push your loved ones away, or completely isolate yourself whenever you face a problem. You might lose your temper, break things, or even resort to self-harm. It's really the unhealed wound reacting defensively, turning all that internal pain into destructive outward action. All right, let's move to part 3 and see how this builds into an immense toll on your mind and body. The mind and body toll. Trauma isn't just some fleeting emotional experience. It fundamentally alters our cognitive functions and our physical reality. Think about your difficulty concentrating as literally your mind crying out to you for help. This is sign 5. Trauma has severe psychological effects. If you suddenly start having gaps in your memory, if you're blacking out often or finding it incredibly hard to keep your train of thought, it is not just everyday distraction. It is literally your brain begging you to pause and work through your unresolved trauma. It's like your body is pulling the emergency brake. And this cognitive toll ties directly into sign 8, struggling with low self-esteem. There are just so many ways trauma skews your self-image, especially if it's rooted in early childhood experiences. Abuse, abandonment, and neglect basically force you to question your own self-worth. And it is especially hard to feel good about yourself if the abuse was inflicted by someone you loved and trusted. In fact, studies show that patients with PTSD frequently suffer from profound feelings of low self-esteem and worthlessness. Which brings us to sign 9, unexplained psychological symptoms. Are you feeling more anxious and panicky lately? Have you lost the ability to find pleasure in activities you used to absolutely love? Are you dealing with poor sleep, a loss of appetite, or lingering depression? Research shows that symptoms like disassociation, depersonalization, frequent flashbacks, nightmares, and severe emotional distress are incredibly common in patients with PTSD. Basically, your body and mind are keeping the score of the pain that you haven't processed yet. Now, let's look at part 4, the path to healing. I know we've covered some really heavy, difficult concepts today, but identifying the trauma is only the very first step toward overcoming it, and there is absolutely hope on the other side. Healing is entirely possible. It just requires deliberate, structured action. So the crucial point is this. Step 1, you must recognize the lingering psychological trauma. Just acknowledge that you're carrying it. Step 2, reach out to a mental health care professional today. You do not have to do this alone, and professional guidance is absolutely vital. And step 3, put in the time and effort. Healing doesn't happen overnight. It takes work, but it is absolutely worth it, and it's completely necessary in order to truly move forward in life and find genuine peace of mind. So I want to leave you with this final thought. Have you or someone you love experienced a traumatic situation? And if so, how do you plan to overcome it? You have the power to seek help, to rebuild your coping mechanisms, and to finally break that cycle of self-sabotage. Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive. If you found this structured look at trauma helpful, please share this explainer with someone who might benefit from it. Take care of yourselves and keep learning.